All right, everyone. Well, as you all know, I'm Rachel. I'm doing a fun 21 days of how to get through the holidays, so holiday hopes and dreams. If you hear a lot of like clanging and what in the background, that's just my son underneath my legs. No worries about it. But today I'm super excited. I have Ashley Mitchell with us today. She is a fellow therapist. I have worked with her before, and she has launched her own career here, empowering women, and she's probably going to tell you so much more about it, but I thought she would be great to share some information about how we can add self-care into our life, because she is like a guru of self-care. I know we had Molly talk about self-care a couple days ago, but it doesn't hurt to have multiple people talk about self-care in different ways, because we all like take care of ourselves in different manners. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Ashley, and I'm so excited for you to join us.
Well, hello. Yes, I'm Ashley. As Rachel said, I work in Minnesota as a mental health therapist, and I also have a women's wellness group that I started almost 6 months ago now. It's been super exciting. It's got a lot of stuff going on. We've kind of done a lot of different things in the last 6 months and growing that up. And the whole group is based around working with women and creating this community of women where we can support each other, kind of go through the struggles, the bumps that we all deal with on a pretty regular basis, being women, moms, kind of working out in the world and dealing with all those things at the same time. And so the group's been really fun, and I'm really glad that you invited me here today, Rachel, to talk about self-care and getting curious and creative about how we're taking care of ourselves in this season of life, in this season we're going through right now.
All right. Have you on mute so that we don't hear my son in the back, or myself on mute. Well, so what are some like tips and what do you think would be helpful for everyone that's watching and listening about self-care when it comes to mental health?
Yeah. So, when you first reached out to me, like it was something I had talked about several times that week with clients. And, it keeps coming up. And this came up back in March when this all started, for the first time, and kind of changed and evolved. And a lot of people reporting that they're just feeling really stuck, feeling like they don't have control over anything, feeling a lot of uncomfortable feelings coming up. And a lot of people are getting stuck in that mindset that, well, I know how to take care of myself. These are the things that I do, but I can't do any of those right now. It's like, yeah, about that. Like, okay, you're right, you can't, and you have no control over that. However, what can you do? What do you need? And that is why I wanted to talk about this today, because it's come up for a lot of us. I know I've shifted my entire self-care routine over the last, 8 months now we're in here.
Mm-hmm.
And it just looks different. But the reality is like every season in life that we go through, whether it's this season, this change and transition, or it's a season that we all kind of deal with, whether it's like a job change or a schedule change or our kids being different ages, like we need different things in those moments. And so really tuning into like, what is it, getting really curious and asking ourselves, what is it in this season right now that I need that will fill my cup, so I have the energy and all of the things that I need so I can fill my tank, so I can actually be good at the roles that I want to be good at in the world. And Rachel, you're shaking your head, and like everyone talk, like I know it, you know it, like everybody
Right.
knows it. Like if we don't take care of ourselves, like we're not going to be able to do the other things that we need and want to do in the world.
Well, and I like how you're saying how like that word in tune really connected with me, because I feel like so often we get really stuck and fixated on like, this is what I do, this is how I do, or like how I take care of myself. And you're right, I've heard that a lot too. Like when you were talking about that, I was like, oh my gosh, I've had so many people share that with me. Like, I can't go for my walks, it's XYZ. I can't go to the gym, it's XY, like they're closed, or all those different things. And yet there's a lot of different ways that if we really take a step back and look at like, how can we adapt it, we have so much more control over the situation. I feel like there's just like been this underlying theme of like, how can we take our control back?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, I really like to encourage people and gently remind people. I'm not super gentle, and you probably know that about me, Rachel, but gently remind people that like we don't have as much control as we think. And what can you do? Like, what actually do you have control over in this moment? And, and those are the things, like, what is it that you actually need? So one thing, you just said too reminded me, we've been talking a lot in the women's group about like being the river, being the water. And I really like that analogy a lot because one, I like water a lot, but it really talks about like adaptation and strength, right? Like the water flows through the river and it doesn't stop because there's a rock in the way. Like it doesn't stop because there's a big bend or there's a turn or it's hard or whatever. Like it just keeps flowing. It changes, it moves, it shifts. The power of the water creates these, ginormous crevices in the earth that are rivers. And it's so powerful when it just continues to adapt and flow. And that's kind of what we need to do. And that's part of what drives me to do what I'm doing is I know women have that inside of them. People have that inside of them. Like we have all of this power to shift and change our lives and adapt and create it how we want it to be. We just forget that sometimes.
What a great visual too of like how much momentum and power that river gets when it just it just keeps going. And really that's what we have to do and learn how to go around the boulders.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's big ones in the river that
Yeah.
we have to push through it though.
Totally. And, change is hard. Like, and that's, a lot of us are dealing with that change right now and that discomfort of all these emotions right now. But, the reality is like, it takes a lot of energy to change our habits and our patterns. Being an autopilot's easy for our brain. It knows exactly what to do. And, changing like, oh, wait, that isn't my go-to self-care routine anymore. Like, oh yeah, that I can't do that. Like, it takes a lot of energy to make that shift. And that's really why like all of this kind of comes back to how are you going to take care of yourself? How are you going to honor yourself? And that's really what I believe self-care is like honoring your needs and what you want in this moment, and taking care of yourself so you can do all the things that you need and want to do in the world.
Are there any like tips or ideas that you provide other people or that you provide those women that you work with for like how to be more curious or how to be creative with finding that self-care that fits for them?
Yeah, as I was kind of thinking about this talk, I kind of broke it down into like 4 different parts. So the first kind of part that is important for everyone is just to be, to start that curiosity of like, what do I need in this season? And that part of the question is super important, right? Because, like, what do I need? What do I normally do? Maybe doesn't fit right now, or you can't do it or whatever, but really getting curious. I think there's so many different ways you can get curious with it. And it's about really tuning in to yourself and your soul of like, what makes me feel energized? I think asking that question can be really important for people. And, there's tons of self-care lists. There's tons, you have friends, supports, like everyone has ideas about what works for self-care. And I don't think hearing those is necessarily a bad thing, but just knowing, with an open mind that like, they might not work for you. So, maybe you try some things and you're like, oh yeah, that just wasn't my jam. Or I actually felt more exhausted afterwards. Like the one time someone suggested I go to a Zumba class, I was like, yeah, that's horrible. Like, I hate that. Like I had to think so much, like that's not self-care.
Right. Well, that's how, like, I always find it funny because people are like, try yoga, Rachel. And I have tried it and it doesn't work with my body. Like, and maybe I'm doing it wrong. I don't know, but it just does not calm me down. And, I think that is really important for us to just be aware of like what actually like fills our cup, what helps us, because for someone else, yoga is a great energy releaser and way to calm their body. And for me, I get more frustrated.
Yep. That's totally how I felt at Zumba. Like, oh, this is bad. I'm mad now.
Yeah.
But that is like just kind of honing in and honoring ourselves of like, I'll try it. Like, I'll go try yoga. I'll go try Zumba. Like, okay, whatever. But maybe that's not my jam and that's okay. Like, but honoring that in yourself, like, nope, that didn't fill my cup. That didn't make me feel energized. It actually made me more stressed and frustrated.
Right.
Like,
right.
And so I think in this season, it is important for people. That's a good way to get curious about maybe you try a few things, but we can't just try them and just be like, well, yeah, I tried it, whatever. Like keep trying until you find something. And, I'm huge on journaling. So I always tell people to keep a journal. I think it's really important for us to track what we try and where our efforts are going, so we know what worked and what didn't work. And keep a list, like challenge yourself to try 3 or 4 new things a week. And then when you find the things that actually work, keep doing those. And that's about curiosity. You can, people can read these lists all day long. They can talk about it with their therapist. They can talk about it with friends, but until you actually put it into action, you're not going to know whether it helps you or not.
Right. Well, and that piece too of like going back to old things that you enjoyed. Because I think a lot of times, like I think about TV shows too that I get really bored of, but then 2 years later I watch it again and I'm like, oh my gosh, this was funny. Like, but I didn't find it funny a year ago. Yep, our
totally.
mood changes, the season changes, and one day I might not like going for a walk, but the other day I do, and it's really enjoyable. So
Yep. Yeah. And honoring that part and, honoring where we are at, in our cycle of life, and being like, oh, well, like maybe I do need some humor. Like I'm going to go back to those funny movies that I used to like, or maybe humor's not my thing. I need to get a little bit more serious. Like that's fine. But honoring that and really asking. And so I think asking that question of like, what do I need right now in this moment? That's one thing I use with my women's group a lot, is we kind of practice like when those feelings of discomfort kind of start to bubble up, or we're feeling really frustrated or stuck, taking a moment, stopping, taking a breath, and asking ourselves the question, what do I need right now? What am I missing? What is it? And so if you can get curious and practice, try things, kind of have a short list of things to go to. And then when those feelings start to bubble up, you can ask yourself like, oh, what is it that's missing? Oh, well, I have one person, and she would totally love me sharing this because this was like a huge aha the last couple of weeks. She's like, I don't know what's going on, Ashley. Like every day in the middle of the day, I get so angry and I'm crabby and I'm like snapping at my coworkers. And then all of a sudden the other day I like stopped and I took a breath and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't eaten any lunch. Like, of course I'm irritable. And she's like, Ashley, I set an alarm on my phone. I'm eating lunch. And like, I haven't had a crabby, irritable day since, in the afternoon in her work. Yeah. And she's like, it's been great. And I was like, okay, well, that's a good example of like slowing down and on like, what is it? Like, what is going on right now? Like, what do I need? And not in a mean, judgmental self-criticism way, of course, but like, what is it that I need? Oh, I just need food.
Just like you would with like your kid or your loved one or a friend or a coworker, like, why are they upset? What do they need? You would ask them and you would take care of them. Yes. But it's so hard for us sometimes to just do that for ourselves, or like, just to take that break or that moment, even if it's for 1 minute, just to check in with ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you said that. You're right. Because we totally do that to other people all the time. What's going on? What do you need? Like, how can I help you? Like, how can you help yourself? Like, we're constantly asking those questions. But we often forget like how, oh yeah, maybe ask yourself that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The other, like, so kind of those first 2 steps are kind of the things that I kind of came to mind right away. And the third one I think is a really big one, and it's huge. I mean, we could probably talk about it for days, but I talk about them as the 4 pillars of wellness. So the 4 things kind of that are at the base of all of us, and they're the pillars that kind of hold us up and support us and help us be who we want to be in the world. And I describe those as sleep hygiene, fuel and hydration, physical movement, and emotional wellness. So
all our basic needs.
All the basic needs. Yep. And checking in, like, is one of those off? Like if you don't have all 4 pillars, you cannot stay flat and stable and steady. Like you need them to hold up your structure, yourself. And yeah, like all the basic needs.
Yep. Rob was just talking about that on Friday when he was talking about addiction, and like when we're starting to feel irritable or we're not ourselves, like those are the 4 things to check in. And you're right, it's just like this common thing, and yet that's the biggest thing we forget about. Oh, did I eat? Am I drinking enough water today? Do I need to go walk around for a little bit because my body has been sitting for the last 8 hours?
Yes. And that's like totally like asking ourselves that question so many times people are like, oh yeah, I asked myself the question, I checked in with myself, and guess what? It was one of the 4 pillars. Well, of course it was. Like, if they're not being met, like it's not gonna, you're not gonna continue to be able to be stable and level.
Right. I find for myself that sometimes it's in that moment, like if I'm at work, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to get this done and this done. It's like, I can't just go out and take a walk right now. But like, what are some of the common reasons that people tend to not want to focus on self-care that you hear about?
Yeah, and I think a lot of us, like you just said, Rachel, like we just kind of forget, honestly. Like, it's not like we're purposefully choosing not to take care of ourselves. We have other priorities. We have little ones who need mom right now. We have, jobs, we have, clients, we have reports, we have tasks that need to be done. And it's a lot easier to focus on those things that are expected of us or we expect of ourselves than taking time out of our day for ourselves.
Right. Sorry, my son just smoked his head.
One thing I talk to people a lot, and I actually use for myself a lot in different formats, is, people talk about this all the time, but like, Mom, I want your water and I want to shake the glass all over. But talking about setting reminders. So if anyone has a smartphone, like, use it as your best friend and your tool and your advocate. Like, I set an alarm right now on my phone as I am working at home, being a therapist, being a coach to my women's group, and also being a teacher to my son who's in a Spanish immersion school. And I don't speak a ton of Spanish. So I actually have a reminder that goes off at my phone at 7:30 every morning. And the other morning it went off and my husband's like, what is that? I'm like, it's a reminder to breathe and be patient. Like, that's all it is. All it says is be patient, breathe. And for me, it's like, I know that in my head, cognitively, I know that, but if I don't get reminded, I'll probably like go into the day and not be patient and be irritable and be like, okay, let's do this. And so it gives me that moment to be like, okay, patience. I got this.
Well, and something so easy of just setting the alarm and not hitting the snooze, like actually taking that moment to do it, to take care of it. Yeah, and it kind of goes back to here, Amber. Can you here? Why don't you play under here for a second, and then once we're done, we can play a little bit more. Okay? You and Eli can go play under the table.
No.
Okay. It kind of goes back to what you were saying too about the autopilot, like getting ourselves out of autopilot and really being intentional. And sometimes it's hard to be intentional when you have distractions.
Yeah.
Or, you're working or you're trying to get dinner ready, but even just having that one reminder, something that's out of the ordinary to just say, hey, get out of that autopilot, check in with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the reality is, like, those things, like the 4 pillars, right? If we don't do those things every single day, like, we are not going to be the best versions of ourselves. And so setting those reminders and making those top priority of like, yeah, I can sit here at my computer and work all day and I probably still won't be done with my work. And I'm going to feel like, I'm going to feel super crummy after work. Honoring, you have little ears by. I'm going to feel super crummy after work. But no, like, I'm going to take that 30 minutes to just get up and move. I'm going to take that 30 minutes to sit down and meditate. I'm going to take that 30 minutes to read or journal or watch a funny TV show, like whatever it is that fills your cup. Take that time, schedule it in. It doesn't need to be this long, extensive piece of time. It can be 10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Well, and what I've learned is that it's always there when I get back and I always get it done, like it always gets done. And the vast majority of time, the person that's making it an emergency is myself.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
yep.
I love that of just like setting that alarm clock, reminding yourself that like you're worth taking the break. You're worth like checking in with yourself so you can be the best you in that moment.
Yes.
Getting through the season.
Yeah, I love that. Like, it is not an emergency. Like, promise. Like, very rarely are there things that are actually emergency.
Right. And yet we make it an emergency so fast, and that gets in the way of our self-care the vast majority of the time. Like, I have to get this laundry done. I have to get these dishes done. I have to get this paperwork done.
Yep. Guess what? It'll be there tomorrow. All of it.
It sure is. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've picked a TV show over doing the dishes, and then I just did them the next day.
Yeah. And guess what? You recharged and you were ready and you were, probably more equipped to be patient with the kids or be attuned to the client or whatever it was that you needed to do later.
Exactly.
The other thing I've been using a lot with clients, kind of the thing that came up, do you know the children's book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt?
I don't.
Okay. So like I remember it from childhood and it came up again not that long ago, a couple months ago, and basically like the chorus line of the book, I think it's a song too, but the chorus line of the book and of the song is, you can't go over it, you can't go through,
yep.
or you can't go around it, you can't go under it, you got to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been using that philosophy a lot of like, yep, you just got to go through it. Like, yep, those feelings are uncomfortable. Find someone who you can be safe and vulnerable with and process through them. Journal it down, like whatever it is that you need to do, but like going through those feelings. And I mean, Rachel, you know this, like you work with feelings all the time, just like I do, but like they're all feelings. Like they're not good nor bad. They're just feelings. And so just labeling them, exploring them, going through them and experiencing them and, honoring yourself on the way through can be so much more valuable than, pretending like they're not happening, getting, trying to get rid of them, like whatever. But the theme of like going through it, of like, nope, taking action, moving forward, going through it, like choose a self-care strategy, try it out, take it, continuing to just go and move through it. Back to the water too. So like that one's been coming up a lot. So yeah, those are like the 4 things that I think I thought of, or I did think of as I was kind of approaching our talk today. But really just, kind of take away from all of it is honoring yourself and your specific needs. Like it doesn't have to look like anyone else's. It doesn't have to look like the self-care you needed a year ago. It doesn't have to look like anything. All it has to do is fill your cup and help you feel energized so you can be like the number one.
Right. Well, and it ties in nicely to what I'm going to talk about on Monday about being flexible and learning how to like adapt and change, like what is it that I need to change within what's going on right now. So I think this is a nice just topic about how to be adaptable with self-care.
Totally. Yeah, that rigidity of like our beliefs and our mindset is often what gets us stuck in the first place. And that, that happens with a lot of things, self-care included. We feel so rigid and stuck on like what it's supposed to look like, and don't give ourselves the opportunity to be open-minded and get curious and explore and try new things.
Yep. And don't let other people's opinions about what your self-care is get in your way.
Yes. Nobody else's opinion ever matters. It's your self-care and you're the one who has to fill your cup, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that wisdom. I'm sure a lot of people would love to learn more.
Yeah.
Are you singing? No. Would you be willing to share a little bit about your group and how people can get in contact with you?
Yeah, so my women's wellness group, it's called Radical Transformer Society, and it's really, the whole basis behind it is supporting and empowering women to find, become the best versions of themselves and kind of honor and believe, understand their superpowers so they can kind of be all of what they need and want to be in the world. And so our group, we are on Facebook. We have a Facebook community where there's a lot of chatter throughout the week. There's lots of discussion, comments, asking for support, lots of love given in there, lots of support in there. I'm in there very frequently responding, kind of supporting people in that. We also have a guest speaker every month on a variety of personal growth topics. Every month it's a little bit different. We also have what we call a women's circle. And so every month, all the women in the group get together on a Zoom call and we just cover topics like, things they have been stuck on in the last month, things, the wins that they achieved in the last month, what their goal was from last month and what they did to accomplish it this month, or maybe where they got stuck and how they want to adjust it for the next month. So lots of support goes on in that group. Right now I have a Black Friday special going on. So you can join the membership for 20% 20% off the first 2 months. So I can tag the link, or I can give you, Rachel, the link to that, to share with the ladies. And it's been a lot of fun. It's such a great group of women. And, when I first started it, I had a lot of friends be like, yeah, I'm not going to join that because like you're a therapist. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even, and they're like, yeah, but Ashley, like, I don't want you to therapize me all the time. And I'm like, no. Like, that's not what this group is about. Like, this group is for all of us. This group is to talk about and like lead through and grow and support us. It's for women specifically, but support women on all the things that we all struggle and deal with every single day, and it's not about, it's not therapy. It's a support women's group. And we focus on kind of those 4 pillars that I talked about and all of that stuff. So.
Well, and sometimes that's the best self-care. I was just listening to something the other day that was talking about like you pick up how other people are around you. And so if you can surround yourself with positivity or like people that are being more inspirational or focusing on health, then you're more likely to do that as well. And so it's just nice to have those different types of groups or like communities that you can be a part of to just listen to other things. I mean, I listen to your lives in that group all the time and just checking them out and just reminding myself like, yes, that's important to remember that I need to focus on that. So it's just a good reminder.
Well, yeah. And like, that's the thing, like we all know the answer, like, all of the women in the group, like I'm sure most of the women you have listening here and the men also, but my group is specifically for women, but like, we know how to do the things. Like we know what to do for the most part. Like for the most part, that's not the problem. And if we don't, usually we can figure it out pretty easy on the internet, right? Like, I mean, you can learn anything on YouTube, right? But the reality is sometimes we need that support. Sometimes we need people to be separated from us and our emotions to like look over it and be like, hey, have you thought of this? Or have you tried that? And they're like, oh my gosh, no. Right. Yeah. I'm totally going to go about it that way. I'm going to shift my mindset a little bit. And that support can be key.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or just have someone hold you accountable. Like, all right, I'm going to focus on this. Well, I better focus on it because they're all going to ask me about it.
Yep. Ashley, her annoying questions about how I did last month.
Oh, cool. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Once I get this set or streamed out, feel free to put all that information below. I'm sure there's a lot of women out there that would love to join that group and just have that extra support. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
I said we would love to have you. We love welcoming new members in.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to make this no longer live, so just give me a second. So I hope everyone has a wonderful day. And tomorrow I'm going to be talking about expectations and how to be a little bit more flexible. So